You did what? To the human's coffee machine? First Officer Tazara's antennae twitched violently, a clear sign of distress among the Arxian species. I merely adjusted its efficiency parameters, Chief Engineer Crix replied, his scaled appendages fidgeting with what passed for nervousness in his species. The device was operating at only 82% optimal capacity. It was offensive to my engineering sensibilities. From her command chair, Captain Merax of the Galactic Confederation vessel, Harmonious Exchange, brought one of her 4 hands to her central eye ridge, a gesture she'd unconsciously adopted from the human delegation currently aboard her ship. Crix, please tell me you at least informed their representative before modifying their equipment. The ensuing silence was deafening. Oh, by the void, Tazara muttered. You know how they are about their morning rituals. The humans had joined the Galactic Confederation barely 3 standard cycles ago, and they were still largely an unknown quantity. Most species found them simultaneously fascinating and perplexing, with their bizarre mixture of advanced spacefaring capability and inexplicable attachment to antiquated technologies and customs. Their insistence on maintaining certain traditional preparation methods for their stimulant beverages was legendary among diplomatic circles. I simply don't understand, Crix continued, his scales now shifting to a worried shade of purple. The modifications I made increase heat efficiency by 23.7% and reduce brewing time by 31.4%. They should be thanking me. Captain Merax was about to respond when the ship's communication system crackled to life. This is Ambassador Chen of the Earth delegation. The human's voice was eerily calm. Would someone care to explain why our coffee machine is now producing what I can only describe as speed-brewed molecular acid? Crix brightened. Ah, you've noticed the improvements. I've optimized the extraction process to improvements. The word carried the kind of Arctic chill usually reserved for the void between galaxies. You call this an improvement? This abomination tastes like it was filtered through a dying star and served in a cup made of broken dreams. Tazara's antennae were now practically tied in knots. Ambassador, please accept our sincerest apologies. Our chief engineer was merely trying to— Do you know what coffee means to humanity, Chief Engineer Crix? Ambassador Chen interrupted, their voice taking on an almost philosophical tone that somehow made it even more terrifying. Coffee isn't just a beverage. It's not merely a stimulant. It's the lifeblood of human civilization. It's the difference between a productive day of interstellar diplomacy and an interplanetary incident. The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. They had all studied the brief but colorful history of humanity's interactions with other species. Humans had a reputation for being surprisingly reasonable about major issues, territorial disputes, trade agreements, even minor military skirmishes. But when it came to certain specific things, well, there was a reason the phrase "don't mess with human comfort items" had entered the Galactic Diplomatic Handbook. Perhaps, Captain Merax attempted to salvage the situation, we could provide you with a replacement unit from our replication facilities. A soft, dangerous chuckle came through the comm system. Oh, Captain. Sweet, innocent Captain. You think this is about having a coffee machine? This was the coffee machine. This was Maria. Maria? Crix asked, confusion evident in his tone. Yes, Maria. She's been with us since Earth Station 1. She's made coffee for 3 Federation presidents, 2 first contact ceremonies, and the entire Rigelian peace accord. She was perfect. There was a pause. And now she tastes like she's trying to assassinate me. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just any piece of equipment. This was apparently some sort of historically significant artifact. Crix's scales had now faded to an almost translucent shade of terror. Ambassador, Captain Merax began carefully. What can we do to rectify this situation? Oh, it's quite simple, really, Ambassador Chen replied, their voice now carrying a note of what humans called cheerfulness, which, everyone had learned, was often more dangerous than anger. Your chief engineer is going to spend however long it takes to restore Maria to her original specifications. Not 31.4% faster, not 23.7% more efficient. Exactly as she was. And while he does that, I'm going to introduce your entire bridge crew to something humans call decaf. Several crew members gasped. They had heard whispers of this decaf, a beverage that looked and tasted like coffee but lacked its essential properties. Humans spoke of it the way other species spoke of ancient torture devices. Surely that's not necessary, Tazara protested weakly. Oh, but it is. You see, this is an educational opportunity. Your crew needs to understand why humans are so particular about certain things. And nothing teaches empathy quite like experiencing the horror of decaf for a full diplomatic shift. Over the next 26 standard hours, several important things happened aboard the Harmonious Exchange. Chief Engineer Crix, working from original Earth schematics and under the watchful eye of the human delegation's barista, a position whose importance suddenly became very clear to everyone, painstakingly restored Maria to her former glory. The bridge crew learned intimate details about human caffeine dependency and the psychological effects of its absence. And most importantly, the Galactic Confederation gained a new appreciation for humanity's peculiar relationship with their traditions. The incident made its way into the official diplomatic archives with a simple notation. Humanity's response to the unauthorized modification of ceremonial equipment demonstrates their species' unique combination of technological flexibility and cultural rigidity. Standard protocol updated. All engineering adjustments to human equipment must receive prior written approval, notarized in triplicate, and preferably not suggested before their morning coffee ritual. But in unofficial circles, the story spread far and wide across the galaxy, growing with each retelling. It became known as the coffee machine incident, and it taught the galaxy an important lesson. Humans might be reasonable about the big things, but mess with their coffee, and you'll learn why they're the only species known to have invented both interstellar travel and 16 different ways to brew a single beverage. Years later, when asked why humans were given such wide berth in certain matters, veteran diplomats would simply smile and say, "Let me tell you about the time someone tried to improve their coffee machine." As for Maria, she continued serving perfect cups of coffee for many years to come, her reputation now enhanced by her survival of an alien engineering incident. Some say that on quiet nights aboard the diplomatic vessel, you can still hear Ambassador Chen muttering about efficiency-obsessed engineers while lovingly cleaning Maria's time-worn surfaces. The Galactic Confederation learned 3 vital lessons that day. Never underestimate humanity's attachment to their traditions. Never assume that efficiency is universally appreciated. And most importantly, never, ever mess with a human's coffee machine without written permission, submitted in triplicate, notarized by a certified diplomat, and preferably delivered with a fresh cup of properly brewed coffee. Chief Engineer Crix went on to have a distinguished career, though he developed an interesting habit of excusing himself from the room whenever coffee was mentioned. He also became the author of the Confederation's most detailed guide on human beverage preparation equipment, with its famous opening line, "First and foremost, if it isn't broken, don't fix it. And if a human says it's perfect, believe them." The incident also led to the creation of a new position within the Confederation's diplomatic corps, Human Comfort Item Conservation Specialist. The job description was simple: prevent well-meaning aliens from optimizing things that humans preferred unoptimized. It became one of the most crucial roles in maintaining interstellar peace, second only to the position of Emergency Coffee Supply Coordinator. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, aboard a diplomatic vessel carrying representatives from 100 worlds, Maria continues to brew coffee exactly as she always has, inefficiently, traditionally, and absolutely perfectly. And that's why we now have a 3-week certification course on human beverage preparation protocols, Administrator Vexna concluded, addressing the latest batch of Galactic Confederation diplomatic trainees. The amphitheater, filled with representatives from 17 different species, remained utterly silent. A tentative appendage rose from the 3rd row. "Respected Administrator." A young Malorian diplomat in training began, their crystalline structure reflecting the ambient light. "Surely this is an exaggeration for educational purposes?" Administrator Vexna's expression shifted to what humans would recognize as a knowing smile. "Tell me, young one, have you received your morning nutrient allocation?" "Of course," the Malorian replied, puzzled by the apparent non sequitur. "And if someone were to optimize it by changing its molecular structure to be 31.4% more efficient?" The Malorian's crystalline form briefly clouded with horror. "That would be unthinkable. The resonance patterns of our nutrient solutions are crucial to our—" They stopped, their crystal facets flickering with sudden understanding. "Precisely," Vexna nodded. "Every species has its equivalents. For humans, coffee is just one of many, but it proved to be the perfect illustration of a broader principle. Cultural significance trumps technological efficiency." The incident aboard the Harmonious Exchange had indeed sparked a revolution in interspecies relations, though not in the way anyone might have expected. What began as a simple misunderstanding about a coffee machine had evolved into a comprehensive reformation of how the Galactic Confederation approached cultural integration. Administrator, another voice called out, this time from a quantum phase entity shimmering in the back row. Our historical archives indicate that humans have repeatedly modified their own coffee preparation methods throughout their history. Why was this particular instance so significant? Vexna activated the holographic display, bringing up an image of the now famous Maria. An excellent question. The key lies not in the modification itself, but in who made the decision to modify. Humans are remarkably adaptive, when they choose to be. The coffee machine incident taught us that it's not about preserving tradition for tradition's sake. It's about respecting the right of each species to determine their own pace of change. The image shifted to show Chief Engineer Crix, now serving as the head of the newly established Department of Cross-Cultural Technology Integration. His scales, once purple with anxiety, now displayed the confident bronze of a being who had learned from experience, perhaps a bit more experience than he would have preferred. In fact, Vexna continued, Chief Engineer Crix's subsequent research revealed something fascinating. Humans have a unique relationship with technological progress. They are capable of extraordinary leaps in innovation, yet they deliberately maintain certain inefficiencies in their daily lives. It's not ignorance or resistance to change. It's a conscious choice to preserve what they call the human element. The hologram switched to footage from various human diplomatic vessels. Each showed similar scenes. Sophisticated quantum computers alongside deliberately analog coffee makers, state-of-the-art medical bays next to what appeared to be ancient cooking implements, and advanced AI systems patiently waiting their turn, while humans engaged in time-consuming social rituals. This duality became even more apparent during the Great Replication Crisis of 2247, Vexna explained, referencing an incident wherein well-meaning AI had attempted to replace all traditional human cooking implements with more efficient alternatives. The resulting diplomatic situation had made the coffee machine incident look like a minor misunderstanding. A hive mind collective representative raised several appendages simultaneously, but surely there must be a logical explanation for this behavioral pattern. Our analysis suggests that maintaining outdated technologies alongside advanced ones is inherently inefficient. Vexna's expression turned serious. That was precisely our mistake, assuming that efficiency is universally desirable. Humans taught us that some inefficiencies serve a purpose beyond their immediate function. They create what humans call mindfulness, appreciation, and connection to tradition. The lecture hall erupted in a cacophony of translated murmurs and biochemical exchanges as the various species tried to process this concept. The idea that inefficiency could be intentional, even beneficial, was revolutionary to many of them. Consider this, Vexna continued once the commotion had settled. After the coffee machine incident, we conducted a comprehensive study of human technological adoption patterns. The results were fascinating. Humans consistently choose to maintain certain primitive methods alongside their most advanced technologies. They call it keeping perspective. The hologram displayed a series of human homes and workplaces, each showing this principle in action. Handwritten notes next to quantum tablets, manual tools beside robotic assistants, and yes, traditional coffee makers sharing counter space with matter replicators. But the most important lesson, Vexna emphasized, came from what happened after the incident. Instead of demanding technological conformity, the Confederation adapted. We learned to ask different questions. Rather than, how can we make this more efficient, we began asking, what value does this inefficiency serve? The results had been remarkable. Once the Confederation embraced this new approach, interspecies relations improved dramatically. Other species began examining their own traditions with fresh eyes, recognizing the value in their own inefficiencies. The quantum phase entities maintained their elaborate greeting protocols despite faster alternatives being available. The Malorians continued their time-consuming crystalline resonance ceremonies. Even the hive mind collectives preserved certain unnecessary individual thought patterns. Today, Vexna concluded, the coffee machine incident is studied not just as a cautionary tale, but as a turning point in galactic history. It marked the moment when the Confederation truly began to understand that advanced civilization isn't about achieving maximum efficiency. It's about choosing which inefficiencies to preserve. The lecture hall fell silent again, but this time it was a thoughtful silence, broken only by the soft whirring of various species' cognitive processes. Now then, Vexna's tone brightened. Who would like to volunteer for the practical exercise? We have a replica of Maria set up in the diplomatic training lab, and Ambassador Chen has graciously agreed to demonstrate proper coffee preparation protocols. The sudden mass exodus of trainees from the lecture hall proved that at least one lesson had been thoroughly learned. When it comes to human coffee rituals, observation is preferable to participation. As the last of the trainees filed out, Vexna's communication device chimed with a message from Ambassador Chen. Don't forget to mention the great tea incident of 2248. They need to understand that coffee was just the beginning. Vexna quickly deleted the message. Some lessons, the administrator decided, were best saved for the advanced courses. After all, there was only so much cultural shock one could process in a single day. Administrator Vexna, we have a situation. The urgent message flashed across the quantum comm at precisely 0300 Galactic Standard Time. The administrator, who had developed the habit of maintaining a constant state of readiness since the coffee incident, immediately activated the secure channel. Report. It's about the humans, Administrator. They're requesting an emergency session of the Confederation Council. It's about tea. Vexna's primary respiratory system momentarily ceased function. Tell me someone hasn't tried to optimize their tea preparation methods. Worse, Administrator. The Algorithmic Harmony Collective has developed what they call the perfect tea formula. They're proposing to standardize all tea preparation across Confederation space. They've already drafted the legislation. There was a long pause as Vexna processed this information. The Algorithmic Harmony Collective was renowned for their mathematical precision and unwavering dedication to optimization. They were also, apparently, about to learn why humanity's beverage preferences had their own section in the Confederation's crisis management protocols. Get me Ambassador Chen, and prepare the Emergency Cultural Preservation Chamber. The response came swiftly. Ambassador Chen is already en route to the Confederation's central hub. They're bringing something called a proper tea set, and Administrator, they're accompanied by a representative from something called the British Embassy. Vexna's chromatophores shifted to the deep indigo of impending diplomatic chaos. May the void have mercy on us all. The Confederation Council chamber had never been so tense. On one side sat the Algorithmic Harmony Collective, their quantum matrices humming with the satisfaction of perfect mathematical solutions. On the other, the human delegation, led by Ambassador Chen and a woman who had been introduced as Dame Elizabeth Cornwall Smythe, British Ambassador for Traditional Beverage Preservation. Distinguished members of the Council. The collective's primary node began, its voice a perfectly modulated harmony of frequencies. We have achieved what centuries of human civilization could not. The mathematically perfect formula for tea preparation. Our calculations account for every variable: water temperature, steeping time, molecular agitation patterns, optimal oxidation levels. Pardon me, Dame Elizabeth interrupted, her voice carrying the kind of polite frigidity that made several species' atmospheric processors activate emergency heating protocols. But did you just suggest that tea can be reduced to mathematics? Of course, the collective responded. All processes can be optimized through proper algorithmic analysis. We have studied every known tea preparation method in human history and derived the optimal. Have you ever, Dame Elizabeth continued, each word precisely measured, sat in your grandmother's garden on a Sunday afternoon, drinking tea from cups that have been in your family for generations, while discussing the weather? The collective's quantum matrices flickered in confusion. The weather is a meteorological phenomenon that can also be reduced to mathematical. Wrong answer, Ambassador Chen muttered. Dame Elizabeth rose from her seat, and despite the fact that several species present were naturally larger than humans, she somehow seemed to tower over the chamber. Let me explain something about tea. Tea is not about optimization. Tea is about tradition. Tea is about the fact that my great-great-grandmother survived the London Blitz and never once let her tea get cold. Tea is about the precise number of biscuits that should accompany a proper cuppa, a number that changes based on the time of day, the season, and whether or not your neighbor has recently done something requiring passive-aggressive commentary over the garden fence. The council chamber had grown so quiet that you could hear the quantum fluctuations in the collective's processing cores. Tea, Dame Elizabeth continued, now warming to her subject, is about the fact that every British household knows exactly how each family member takes their tea, and getting it wrong is a social faux pas from which one might never fully recover. Tea is about the eternal debate between milk first and milk last factions, a controversy that has divided families and sparked philosophical discussions spanning centuries. She paused to open an ornate wooden box she had brought with her. The scent of proper English breakfast tea began to fill the chamber. Several species whose olfactory systems had never experienced it before found themselves inexplicably homesick for a planet they'd never visited. But most importantly, she said, beginning what the human delegation recognized as a proper tea service. Tea is about the imperfections. It's about the slightly different taste you get from your mother's tea service compared to your own, even when using identical ingredients. It's about the chip in your favorite mug that you've had since university. It's about the specific way the afternoon light falls through your kitchen window, and how it makes the tea taste better somehow, even though that's scientifically impossible. The algorithmic harmony collective's primary node began to exhibit signs of cognitive distress. But efficiency, optimization. Oh dear, Dame Elizabeth said, in a tone that made several council members involuntarily straighten their posture. You really don't understand at all, do you? Let me demonstrate. Would anyone care for a proper cup of tea? What followed was a masterclass in human cultural diplomacy. Dame Elizabeth performed the tea ceremony with the kind of precise imprecision that only centuries of tradition could produce. Each cup was served with exactly the right amount of ceremony and exactly the wrong amount of mathematical precision. The algorithmic harmony collective watched in mounting distress as she added a splash of milk to one cup, just a touch to another, and the usual to a third, somehow producing perfectly customized beverages without a single measurement being taken. But, the collective protested weakly, how can you replicate these results without proper quantification? Dame Elizabeth smiled the smile of someone who had just won a battle without the enemy realizing war had been declared. That's precisely the point, dear. We don't want to replicate them exactly. The variations are what make it perfect. The implications rippled through the council chamber like a temporal shockwave. Species that had never understood the human resistance to complete optimization began to experience the first inklings of comprehension. The algorithmic harmony collective's quantum matrices were showing signs of a paradigm shift that would keep their philosophers busy for decades. Ambassador Chen, watching from the sidelines, sent a quick message to Administrator Vexna. This is why we let the British handle the tea crisis. After all, they once went to war with an entire planet over taxes on tea. Imagine what they'd do with the entire galaxy. The legislation for standardized tea preparation was quietly withdrawn. The algorithmic harmony collective requested a sabbatical to reconsider the nature of perfection, and Dame Elizabeth Cornwall Smythe was appointed to the newly created position of Confederation Special Envoy for Beverage-Related Cultural Preservation. As the council session concluded, Administrator Vexna updated the Confederation's diplomatic handbook once again. When humans say something is perfect just the way it is, do not attempt to prove them wrong with mathematics, especially if that something comes in a cup. With all due respect, Administrator Vexna, the Synthetic Intelligence Research Director stated, I believe we've become overly cautious regarding human beverage preparations. The quarterly meeting of the Confederation's Cultural Integration Committee had been proceeding smoothly until this moment. Vexna's chromatophores flickered in warning patterns, but the director continued undeterred. We've extensively studied their coffee protocols. We've documented their tea ceremonies. We've even established guidelines for something called proper pint pulling. Surely we've now mapped all significant human beverage-related cultural boundaries. From her seat at the committee table, Dame Elizabeth Cornwall Smythe exchanged a knowing look with Ambassador Chen. The humans had a betting pool going on which beverage would trigger the next crisis, and hot chocolate had surprisingly favorable odds. Director, Vexna began carefully. Perhaps we should consult our human colleagues before... We've already begun the project, the director announced proudly. Our latest synthetic intelligence platform has analyzed every known hot chocolate recipe in human history. It's developed what we believe to be the ultimate optimization. A perfectly balanced, scientifically calibrated hot chocolate formula that will revolutionize... Did you say hot chocolate? A new voice interrupted. The committee turned to see Dr. Isabella Ramirez, recently appointed human representative for the Confederation's Science Division, standing in the doorway. Her expression made several committee members wish they had reviewed their emergency evacuation procedures more recently. Ah, Dr. Ramirez, the director's synthetic avatar brightened. Perfect timing. Your cultural background includes significant experience with this beverage, correct? We'd value your input on our optimization process. Ambassador Chen quickly initiated the committee's emergency containment protocols, while Dame Elizabeth began preparing a proper cup of tea. They'd learned that diplomatic incidents involving human beverages were best handled with preventive measures. My input? Dr. Ramirez's voice carried the kind of warmth that made cryogenic storage units activate their safety protocols. Let me tell you about hot chocolate. Not the mass-produced approximation you've probably analyzed, but real hot chocolate. The kind my abuela used to make. She approached the holographic display showing the AI's formula and waved it away with a gesture that somehow conveyed generations of disapproval. Hot chocolate isn't about chemical compositions or optimal temperature gradients. It's about watching your grandmother toast cacao beans on a comal that's older than your parents'. It's about the specific way she grinds the beans with cinnamon and vanilla, a process that cannot be replicated by any machine because it requires something your AI can't quantify: love. The director's avatar flickered uncertainly. But our analysis shows. Your analysis, Dr. Ramirez continued, now pulling out what appeared to be an ancient wooden molinillo from her lab coat, doesn't account for the sound of the chocolate being frothed by hand, a sound that has remained unchanged since the Aztec Empire. It doesn't factor in the way the aroma fills a kitchen on a cold morning, bringing back memories of every cup you've ever had before. Ambassador Chen sent a quick message to the committee's archive. Note for future reference. Hot chocolate appears to hold similar cultural significance to coffee and tea, with additional historical depth. Recommend immediate classification as Class A Cultural Preservation Priority. The director's synthetic intelligence attempted to process this new information. But surely some aspects can be optimized. Our calculations suggest that mechanical whisking could achieve superior aeration patterns. Dr. Ramirez actually laughed, a sound that somehow conveyed both amusement and imminent danger. You want to optimize hot chocolate? Let me tell you about the Great Hot Chocolate Schism of 2189, when someone suggested that traditional Mexican chocolate could be improved by standardizing production methods. 300 years of carefully maintained peace between rival chocolate-making families nearly collapsed in a single afternoon. She began unpacking what appeared to be a complete traditional hot chocolate preparation kit, each item clearly ancient and well-loved. Every family has their own recipe, passed down through generations. Each one is perfect, and each one is different. The variations aren't flaws to be corrected, they're signatures to be preserved. The director's avatar showed signs of computational distress. But how can multiple different versions all be perfect? It defies logic? Dr. Ramirez smiled while heating water in a copper pot that looked old enough to have witnessed several major historical events. Let me demonstrate something about human logic when it comes to traditional beverages. Would anyone like to try my abuela's hot chocolate recipe? The one that won the Great Chocolate Peace Accord of 2190? What followed was a masterclass in cultural diplomacy through sensory experience. Dr. Ramirez prepared hot chocolate using methods that predated space travel, yet somehow produced results that made several synthetic beings question their fundamental understanding of perfection. The director's avatar watched in fascination as committee members from species that couldn't even process chocolate experienced what humans called emotional resonance from simply observing the preparation ritual. You see, Dr. Ramirez explained while expertly wielding her molinillo, hot chocolate isn't just a beverage, it's a story. Every cup contains history, culture, and memory. Your AI can analyze the chemical composition, but it can't quantify the feeling of being wrapped in your grandmother's kitchen on a cold morning, or the way the steam rises in patterns that look exactly like they did centuries ago. The director's synthetic intelligence spent several microseconds processing this concept before admitting defeat. We may need to recalibrate our understanding of optimization. Administrator Vexna, watching the scene unfold, updated the Confederation's cultural database. Human beverage classification update. Hot chocolate now joins coffee and tea in the category of beverages that must not be optimized under any circumstances. Note: this list is probably incomplete. Recommend assuming all human beverages have similar cultural significance until proven otherwise. As the committee members experienced what several described as a religious experience in a cup, Ambassador Chen turned to Dame Elizabeth. Should we warn them about mulled wine traditions before winter comes? Dame Elizabeth simply smiled and sipped her tea. Let them discover some things for themselves. After all, learning about human beverages is a journey, not a destination. The director's avatar made one final attempt at understanding. But surely there must be some universal principles we could— Director, Dr. Ramirez interrupted gently. Let me tell you about the time of 3 moles, when my great-grandmother and her sisters each claimed to have the only authentic family recipe. The committee meeting extended well past its scheduled time, but no one seemed to mind. Sometimes, the most important diplomatic lessons couldn't be optimized for efficiency, especially when they came in a cup. The annual Confederation Winter Diplomatic Summit was approaching, and Administrator Vexna had taken every possible precaution. The beverage protocols had been reviewed, traditional preparation methods were thoroughly documented, and emergency cultural preservation teams stood ready. Yet somehow they had missed something crucial. What do you mean, every family has their own recipe? Vexna asked, staring at the report from the Cultural Integration Committee's newly established Seasonal Beverage Monitoring Division. Exactly that, Administrator, the division chief explained, their crystalline form clouded with concern. We've discovered that human mulled wine preparation doesn't just vary by region or culture. It varies by individual family unit. And apparently, each version is considered the only correct way to make it. But we've dealt with this before, Vexna replied. Coffee, tea, hot chocolate. Surely we can apply the same principles. There's a complication, the chief continued. Winter gatherings appear to involve multiple families bringing their own versions to the same event. According to our research, this simultaneously promotes social bonding and intense recipe-based competition. Vexna's chromatophores shifted to the pale yellow of dawning horror. And we've invited representatives from how many human families to the summit? 17, Administrator, each with their own traditional mulled wine recipe that has been perfected over generations. The silence that followed was broken only by the soft hum of the station's atmospheric processors, trying to cope with the sudden spike in anxiety pheromones. Get me Ambassador Chen, Vexna ordered. And? Prepare the diplomatic incident containment chamber, the large one. The summit began peacefully enough. The station's atmospheric systems had been calibrated to produce what humans called a proper winter feeling. Decorative illumination had been installed according to various Earth cultural traditions. Everything seemed perfect. Then the mulled wine started flowing. This is quite nice, Lady Margaret Winchester Hayes said diplomatically, sipping from a glass of mulled wine prepared by Professor Johannes Schmidt. Though perhaps a touch heavy on the star anise? Professor Schmidt's eyebrows rose fractionally. This is my grandmother's recipe. She won the Black Forest mulled wine competition of 2156. Ah, Lady Margaret replied, with the kind of smile that had preceded several minor wars in Earth's history. How innovative. Of course, my family's recipe dates back to the Victorian era. We find that a lighter touch with the spices allows the wine's natural qualities to shine through. From across the room, Sofia Petrov, Russian cultural attaché, sniffed her glass and commented, perhaps a bit too loudly. In proper Russian glühwein, you should be able to taste the history in every sip. Glühwein. Professor Schmidt turned slightly. I believe you mean glühwein. That's what I said. No, you used the incorrect stress pattern. It's a subtle but crucial difference that... Ambassador Chen, watching from a strategic position near the emergency exits, sent a quick message to Administrator Vexna. Begin diplomatic containment procedures. It's starting. The station's AI, which had been extensively briefed on beverage-related cultural incidents, began slowly adjusting the ambient temperature and lighting to promote calm. It wasn't fast enough. All I'm saying, Paolo Romano interjected, his Italian dignity clearly offended, is that any proper vin brûlé requires at least 3 different citrus elements, preferably from trees that have been in the family for generations. Citrus? Lady Margaret's voice could have frozen nitrogen. In mulled wine? The Confederation's Cultural Integration Committee, watching via secure feeds, began updating their crisis protocols in real time. The phrase beverage-based diplomatic incident was quickly replaced with multilateral cultural beverage dispute. Then Dr. Isabella Ramirez arrived, carrying what appeared to be an ancient family punch bowl. Perhaps, she suggested smoothly, this would be a good time to share my great-grandmother's Mexican ponche navideño. It's not exactly mulled wine, but it does represent another tradition of heated holiday beverages. The room fell silent as the aroma of tejocotes, guavas, and spices began to fill the air. Several diplomatic sensors registered a sudden drop in hostile pheromones. That smells incredible, Lady Margaret admitted, momentarily forgetting her defense of proper British mulled wine traditions. The fruit-to-spice ratio is quite intriguing, Professor Schmidt added, his academic interest piqued. The tension in the room began to dissipate as Dr. Ramirez shared her family's punch, accompanied by stories of winter gatherings and generations of recipe refinements. Other representatives, inspired by this diplomatic breakthrough, began sharing not just their beverages, but the histories behind them. Watching from the security center, Administrator Vexna turned to the division chief. Are you recording all of this? Every detail, Administrator. Though I must admit I'm having trouble categorizing the various cultural significance matrices. They seem to be overlapping? That's exactly the point, Ambassador Chen said, joining them. Winter beverages aren't just about the recipes, they're about the sharing. The arguing over whose version is best is part of the tradition. It's how we celebrate our differences while coming together. Vexna's chromatophores shifted to a thoughtful blue. So the conflict is intentional? Not exactly, Chen smiled. It's more like a ritual. We argue about recipes precisely because we care enough to preserve them. The debate itself is a form of respect. The summit concluded without major incident, though the Confederation's database of human beverage traditions grew considerably more complex. New entries were added regarding the proper temperature for serving various mulled wines, the historical significance of family punch bowls, and the importance of acknowledging that every recipe can be simultaneously traditional and unique. Administrator Vexna's final report included a special notation. Human winter beverage traditions demonstrate an apparent paradox. They are both a source of division and unity. The act of debating preparation methods appears to strengthen rather than weaken cultural bonds. Recommendation: future diplomatic events should allocate additional time for beverage-related discussions and maintain separate temperature-controlled stations for each family's traditional recipe. As the representatives departed, Lady Margaret was overheard asking Dr. Ramirez for her ponche recipe, while Professor Schmidt and Sophia Petrov engaged in an intensive discussion about the theoretical foundations of proper spice ratios. Ambassador Chen's final message to the committee simply read, "Wait until they discover how humans feel about barbecue traditions." The end. Though the beverage debates continue eternally.